2020. And I'd like to call to order the Learning and Teaching Committee meeting for St. Charles Community Unit School District 303. So first up on our agenda is citizens' comments. Do we have any?
There is one citizen comment.
Okay.
All right.
Ms. Barker?
The school code provides for a public comment period at each board meeting, subject to reasonable constraints. The practice of this board is to limit public comment to 3 minutes per speaker to a total of 30 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. Speakers addressing the board are expected to maintain a reasonable level of civility. Also, personnel matters are sensitive and confidential. Comments regarding individuals should be respectful. Insults and defamatory remarks have no place in this setting. The board will terminate public comment if speakers cannot adhere to these guidelines. Please identify yourself at the beginning of your remarks.
My name is Jennifer Pratt. My previous comment was cut off before I was finished. It is imperative that the schools open in the fall and kids are on site. Remote learning does not work for most kids. There's so much more to learning than homework, and that's all it has been for the past 2 months. I have 2 high schoolers in AP and honors classes. They've had a combined total of 23 hours of classroom time in the last 8 weeks of school. When you do the math, that's less than 5% of what it would have been, assuming just 6 hours a day for each. My senior is losing everything. Senior prom, senior breakfast, walking across the stage is top 5% of her class, even the fun of senior ditch days. Don't let any other students miss out on learning, fall sports, PE, theater, music, or any other activities. Use logic and common sense. Stop this hysteria and open.
That concludes the public comment. I don't know why they got cut off at the end.
Okay. All right, thank you. And we have a superintendent COVID-19 update.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much, Mr. McNally and Ms. Barker. I appreciate having the opportunity just to share with you a couple of things that are going on. We met most recently on Thursday night, so there's not a lot that's transpired over the weekend, but I would just like to mention a couple of things. First of all, this is the last week of school for our students and staff, and although it's not a traditional last week of school, I can tell you that our teachers are doing really neat things across the district to try to connect with students and help give them some closure to the school year via Zoom meetings and Zoom class meetings, and or not Zoom, but our Google Meets, but online kinds of meetings to make sure that students feel like that they have a sense of closure, and they're also have an opportunity to see their teacher and see other students in their class. So we really appreciate our staff members trying to find a way to kind of have a final connection with students as we wrap up the school year. And I know that Mrs. Geyer is going to share a couple of stories later that will give you some insight into some of the things that are happening in the district. But our teachers and staff really should be commended for all of the work that they have been doing over the past couple of months. You know, we've heard people say things like unprecedented, and I need to just emphasize that really they've done extraordinary kinds of things as staff members, because there really is no pandemic playbook for education. We have had to create and design everything that's happened across the district over the past couple of months. And, you know, our teachers and our students and our staff members have been really creative and innovative, and they've stepped up in ways you know, that just really that were unexpected to try to close the gap. If something needed to be done, someone stepped in to do the work. And I really appreciate kind of the positive attitudes and the teamwork that has gone in to making learning possible for our students in our community in light of really the situation that is not ideal, and nor is it something that we want to try to continue. So thank you to our teachers and to our staff, and we just wish everyone a great last week of school and hope that as we wrap up the school year that people will have the opportunity to try to kind of have those final connections and opportunities to say goodbye to everyone that they've been on this journey together this school year as it comes to conclusion. I would also like to say that today we received word from the state task force that we should be receiving guidance on June the 1st on reopening school in the fall. The state is working very hard to try to ensure that districts have a guidance document for the parameters for what that might look like. And we are looking forward to having the opportunity to have that information and to begin having conversations in our district about what school will look like in the fall and how we can plan to reopen school. I use reopen because at some point we are going to reopen, and I want to make sure that we emphasize that. We want to be back together. We want our kids back in our classrooms. We want our staff back together, and we want to be able to find ways to safely provide in-school learning opportunities for students. So we're going to start to plan in that direction. And I just wanted you to know that that guidance is coming, and we look forward to sharing more details with you once it is available. So thank you so much. That concludes my update.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pearson. I'd like to echo that as far as the great appreciation for the staff. And there's a lot of learning going on in my house at 3 different levels, and I'm appreciative of the teachers at all levels. So I'd like to move on here to our welcomes and celebrations and recognitions. And so Mrs. Geyer.
As Dr. Pearson said, tonight I'd like to celebrate our teaching staff. And I'd like to just share with you just a few of the many stories and examples where our staff have connected with students, supported our students, and engaged students in really some innovative and very out-of-the-box ways to deliver their instruction. It was very hard to choose just a few, but I think you'll enjoy these. So we have had across our schools morning newscasts that have included the principals, teachers, support staff, related service staff, and students, and even puppets to really start the students' day in learning. Using the children's story, Flat Stanley, a teacher mailed a cutout of herself to all of her students, along with a bingo board of activities to do with their teacher. Students then posted the pictures of the different ways they spent time with their teacher. There have been virtual field days, talent shows, spirit weeks, themed lunches that teachers have had with their students to show how it was important to just stay connected during this time. A teacher set to retire this year shared with me that she spent much of the last couple of months learning new technology tools. She did this at the end of her career because she knew how important it was to find different ways to engage her students, not only with her, but with their classmates so that they could engage in these academic conversations. Music lessons were presented that engaged not just the students, but their families in making music and sharing it back out with others. One school did an essential workers project where the students created digital books to thank all different types of essential workers. And reading them just brought warmth to your heart as they looked at, the cashier at Jewel Osco and all the different ways that these essential workers were helping them and their family. Authentic play-based learning using materials from home, sorting the silverware, following an AB pattern for our youngest, graphing the colors of clothes in the closet, daily read alouds, and even bedtime stories for our preschool learners. Our 3 to 5-year-olds have learned how to successfully mute and unmute themselves for taking talking turns. Staying in contact with students and making sure they understood that taking care of themselves and their families came first, and that the teacher was there then to help with any academics that they needed to catch up on. A middle school science teacher doing her lab demo right in her kitchen and videotaping it. Another one who videotaped her math lessons using the shower wall as a whiteboard. I think this just goes to show how committed our teachers are, but also how innovative they are in their practices. And now I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Blomquist, our SEA president. He has another celebration he'd like to share.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Geyer. Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Thank you, school board, for allowing me a chance to speak tonight. On behalf of all the teachers in D303, I want to thank you for your partnership in providing the best possible remote learning experience for our students. And one thing, as we've navigated through the challenges and successes of the last couple of months, one message has been very clear from our teachers, and that is that we miss being with the students. We miss being in the schools, in the classrooms, with each and every one of our students. It pains us that we can't be there to celebrate those in person. We can't celebrate those accomplishments, whether that's academically or through your activities and athletic competitions, even your life celebrations. We really want to be there to say a proper goodbye in person and to sign those yearbooks and to have those school traditions. But just know that we are with you right now as you close out your school year. We want to thank the parents. We realize you have taken on a tremendous task of playing co-teacher, of being the first line of defense for all of these assignments. And we know the monumental efforts that you're going through to give your kids a proper learning experience. We know it takes a lot of work on our end, but we also know it takes a lot of work on your end. So thank you for all of that. We want to thank administration and the school board for all their efforts to provide that consistency, to provide that guidance so that we can continue to make our remote learning experiences better. And hopefully not too much more remote learning after this year, but we'll be prepared for it any way it comes. As we wrap up the school year, we want to really encourage all of our students to engage in our live sessions. Our teachers are all having live sessions this week. We want to get an opportunity to say some proper goodbyes and to kind of tie a bow around the entire school year and the last couple of months of remote learning. If you still have assignments or projects to finish up, we hope you can get them turned in, and we want to provide that meaningful feedback to your learning. So keep charging all the way towards the finish line. We're here to support you every step of the way, and we're so proud of the work that you've done all year. We're so proud of the work that we've done as a district all year. And again, I want to thank you for giving me the time to express that from the teachers. And we couldn't be more proud of how our students have persevered and grown through not just these last couple of months, but the entire year. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blomquist. Again, I know firsthand the work that goes into it, but I see a lot of things behind the scenes that I've not seen before that a lot of teachers are doing. And I know the hours and hours and hours. People think, oh, there's no commute. There's no commute, but there's a lot of other work to do. And some of these days end up longer than they were before. So again, very much appreciated. Okay, so next up, we have our discussion items. First item for discussion is the Title I school-wide waiver for Anderson Elementary School.
And I'm going to invite Dr. Roosh to share the synopsis. And we also do have Mr. Jared Anderson, principal, here with us too.
Okay.
Thank you. So tonight we are requesting your approval of the Title I school-wide waiver for Anderson Elementary School. The school must request this waiver every year that it does not meet the 40% low-income minimum threshold. The board first approved a waiver for Anderson in the 2017-2018 school year. Anderson has had an approved waiver every year since then. And as a reminder, having this waiver approved has no impact on the amount of funds that the district or Anderson receives from the grant, but rather it allows the school to spend the funds in a more flexible manner. In order to continue utilizing Title I funds in a school-wide manner at Anderson, the district must submit a waiver to ISB, and the waiver must be approved by the board before submission to ISB for their final approval.
Okay, does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns on that matter? Okay, I know this is something that's kind of an annual thing.
I see Mrs. Weibel waving.
Yep, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
What is our percentage this year? For, if we're not at 40, what's our percentage this year? Do you know?
Yeah, just off the top of my head, we hovered just around 30%. 27 comes to mind, but between 27 and 30 is a number that we've kind of hovered around.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, and again, I know this is something that's kind of, it's almost like the annual renewal, so it's something that we're not ignoring it. It's just that we've kind of heard much of this, so we kind of know where we're going with it. Next up is transitional.
Would you move that one to consent, Mr. McNally?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, move it to consent. My mistake. I'm moving too quick. Next up, we have transitional math, quantitative literacy, and statistics.
And Dr. Warren will join us for the synopsis for the next two.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share information about our new course, Quantitative Literacy and Statistics. This course was approved by the board last fall to replace MCAT, and this was in response to the PWR, the Post-Secondary and Workforce Readiness Act. And the purpose of doing so is to provide these classes that to reduce remedial coursework at the college level. Since transitional math is still new, there are limited resources available. The team reviewed the two that are available and are recommending Math Lit. So the resource Math Lit walks students through carefully designed explorations, activities, and instruction to garner a greater conceptual understanding of the major themes of numeracy, proportional reasoning, algebraic reasoning, and functions. In addition, we would like to pilot My Math Lab at no cost to the district, which is an online homework, tutorial, and assessment program integrated with the Math Lit resource. In January, we'll evaluate the effectiveness of My Math Lab as well as Math Lit and make a recommendation for the best resource to sustain this program long-term.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns on this item here? And I'm trying to flash through so I don't miss any hands. I see 4 of you, nothing. I see some heads shaking no. So I think we are good there. That is a consent agenda item, I believe, unless anyone would like that put on for action. I'm assuming consent. Okay. Then our next item up is the AP Statistics Resources.
I'm back for more math fun. This is Christine Warren. For AP Statistics, we are recommending a 6-year bundle for the practice of statistics and Sapling Plus. The current AP Statistics book was published in 2014. Since then, the College Board has updated the course and exam description that were put into effect for this current school year. This text would address the new objectives that are outlined in the presentation that you received.
Okay. Again, kind of it's going to be a consent agenda item, but at least for now. Does anybody have any questions? Again, seeing some no's. Okay, we can move on. We are moving quickly here. Next up is Phonemic Awareness Resource.
And again, Dr. Warren will do the synopsis.
All right.
So we're shifting from high school math to phonemic awareness at the K2 level. Currently, we do not have an identified Tier 1 resource to address phonemic awareness. Integrity has been vetted through MTSS, and as a result, many buildings are using it for Tier 2 and in some instances Tier 1. Our recommendation is to provide consistency of the use across our K2 classrooms in the district. By doing so, it will really give us the tools to help us identify the effectiveness of the program. So we're just looking to provide all teachers with a consistent resource across the district.
Mr. McNally, you're still muted.
I'm sorry. Okay, the one I was just saying, it's hard. I can't just look across the table. I have to flash across the screen, and I'm seeing nobody that has any major concerns, it looks like. So we can move on to the minor topic of the new elementary day.
And I'm going to invite Dr. Rush back. She will share the synopsis, and then I have Dr. Byrne here, as well as Mr. Blomquist and Mrs. Jensen to support any conversation.
Okay, so this minor topic is probably going to take some time, I'm going to guess. So, thank you.
Thank you. So in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been considering the many possibilities of what school will look like for the 2020-2021 school year. Knowing that school may look different in the 2021 school year, we are developing a one-year interim plan to support the implementation of the longer elementary day, as well as to support the needs of students as they transition from remote learning to in-person learning. The presentation on the new elementary day includes a discussion on the following topics. 1, a recommendation for the adjustment in the role of Empower teachers. 2, remote learning support. 3, supporting the transition to on-site learning. 4, an adjusted plan for Empower module implementation. And 5, interim plan cost savings with staffing and supplies. As we continue to navigate the landscape of what school could look like and should look like in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are seeking the advice of experts. Themes are emerging from the literature around the need for a shift in education to focus efforts on developing competencies and mindsets such as resilience and problem solving. Consider the words of the principal author of the American Academy of Pediatrics in his 2018 report, The Power of Play. Michael Youngman says, play is urgently relevant to the new education world that will emerge from the coronavirus pandemic. Play can mitigate stress, Youngman tells us. The executive function skills that kids develop through play can promote resilience, and play can restore safe and nurturing relationships with parents, teachers, and other children, which also promotes resilience. The Council on School Health, which is a part of the American Academy of Pediatrics, has been in collaboration with the Council on Infectious Diseases in an effort to provide guidance on returning to in-person education in schools. The AAP just released plans to make up for lost academic progress due to school closures and distress associated with the pandemic should be balanced by a recognition of the likely continued distress of educators and students that will persist when schools reopen. If the academic expectations are unrealistic, school will likely become a source of further distress for students and educators at a time when they need additional support. It is also critical to maintain a balanced curriculum with continued physical education and other learning experiences rather than exclusive emphasis on core subject areas. We know that it was a concern raised by the Citizen Advisory Committee that not all children are experiencing the same learning, supports, and connections at home during this time of remote learning. We know that some students are dealing with trauma fatigue because they are facing uncertainties related to food, shelter, health, and safety, all of which create a burden on children. As we transition back to environment where students will not only survive, but thrive is more essential than ever. But through the longer elementary day, we will have additional time to provide students with meaningful learning experiences to support their academic, social, emotional, and competency development. If we heed the word of the experts, we know it will be more important than ever to provide students with balanced curricula where students can engage in purposeful play, collaborate, problem solve, and develop flexibility, which we have outlined in this interim plan.
And just to let everyone know, when she froze, you didn't miss any words. She came back right on where her next words. So.
Okay, so I am going to guess that there are going to be 1 or 2 questions here. It seems to be a pretty major topic for people. So where to begin? Do I see anybody raising a hand? Mr. Bryant.
I'll start off. Just a clarifying question. With the use of iReady in the plan, would the use of it change next year compared to how it's being utilized with teachers this year?
So Mr. Shazar can add on to what I say in his later presentation. But in respect to the longer elementary day, we would be recommending the use of iReady for diagnostic assessment and personalized learning through the use of the Empower Teachers and LRC Media Specialists.
And to add on to that, Mr. Bryant, it would be used by all teachers and all students across K8, sorry. Is that help too or not?
Yeah, I know that a couple of my children's teachers use it, and I was curious if there was an additional piece to the software, the program that we were going to be using for the students next year.
Mrs. King, do you want to maybe explain a little bit right now? Because that might help at this point. It may take some time off our next presentation.
So I can say that there are additional pieces to iReady, not just the software, but teacher resources for in-person learning, as well as a small group and individual work that could be done remotely. So iReady has both diagnostic assessment, personalized pathways for students that are online learning with explicit instruction. And then a third part is teacher-led instruction with resources provided by iReady. So it will look a little different next year than it has this year. This year it was a field test in some schools.
Okay, now, just are a lot of the questions, should I let you guys continue with presentation here? I just there was a bit of a pause there, and so did you have more to present to us here?
No, I was just saying with Mrs. King, that will be our final agenda item, but I thought maybe it might be helpful to be able to share that information right now.
Okay, I didn't want to jump ship on that. So, all right. I'm unfortunately not all the board members are on the same screen. So, anyone else?
Could I ask another question really quickly, Mr. McNally?
Sure. And then Ms. Barker, you're up.
With the cost involved with this new proposal, it mentions that $210,000 will be used from title funds. What was the plan for that money before this new proposal?
Dr. Roosh, do you want to go with that, or would you like me to?
I can add one specific thing in terms of, so Title III, which is the funding that we have to support our English language learners, was intended to support them for summer school. And given the fact that we're not going to be having summer school in person like we normally do, we're going to have quite a bit of money that we're carrying over. And so we'd like to use that money next year to provide support for students through an interventionist role. And then when we get our additional funds for next school year, plan for school year with the summer of 2021 with the new funds that we'll get.
Okay. And I believe, Ms. Barker, you had the floor next.
Yeah, so my question is really more about, this is a potential plan B, was not the original plan. So I just want to hear how our teachers are feeling about a potential plan B. So if we could, Joe, if you want to answer that.
Yes, so we did have a chance to sit down, in particular, the ones who are most affected by this Plan B modification would be our LRC, our Empower teachers, our music, art, and our PE. We sat down with them and they said, we're willing to take on this this extra challenge over the next year. We recognize that there's with this pandemic, we all have to make adjustments with the instruction that we're providing, with the supports that we're providing, and they're happy to do that on an interim basis, on a short-term basis. It's not a long-term solution. This is not sustainable for a long period of time, but we can definitely make this work next year.
I'm going to kind of jump in on that one as well. Just that was a concern I had. I just want to make sure that everyone is clear. This is kind of the plan B that we're doing because of the situation we're in. And the following year, we would intend to return to essentially what we agreed upon as far as negotiations and things like that. Am I correct? And whoever
I
wants.
think that, I can, I'll let Mr. Blumquist can add in, but I think that that is would be our recommendation, that we'd be able to move forward. I see Mr. Blumquist shaking his head. Yes.
I see that as well. So, and Ms. Barker, did you have more, or was I okay? Ms. Fairgrieve, Ms. Weibel, Ms.
Sorry.
Weibel had your hand up. You hit the buzzer first. So
Okay. I was going to say, if Heidi wants to go first, you can. I just want to clarify with Mr. Blumquist quick. So in relation to the LRCs and the ISCs, we've spoken to them and their feedback is, I just want to clarify that one point, that they're on board with this regardless of the timing. So the way it sits, we're not exactly sure the timing depending on what our fall looks like. So they understand that it's kind of in progress, correct?
Right. Yeah, we don't know exactly, that transition period. We anticipate to be about a trimester when we get back into school, but we won't know those things until we start seeing when we're returning back to school and the gaps that we're covering. And LRC is well versed at our literacy curriculum, so they're happy to provide that additional instruction and support.
Okay, great. We really appreciate them being on the team to help the students. And I know that's the priority of all the teachers. And so for them to jump in and put students first, as they usually do and continue to do, is much appreciated as we try to get everybody up to speed. I think it's a really great effort. So thank you for that. Thanks.
okay, Ms. Fairgrieve, you are up.
Thank you. Can someone speak? Well, I have a couple questions. First of all, have we hired all of the Empower teachers yet, or is that still in process?
So I can speak to that. We have, and Mr. Blumquist, correct me if I make a mistake on my numbers here. So we have 5 internal people that we have offered the position to that would move into that role. And so, but at this point, we have held off to move forward, but they are, I think someone used the word today that they are so anxious to get started in this role and to support in any way that they can. We also, as you saw on the on last Monday night's personnel report, we have another teacher from outside that we have hired, but we, of course, will continue to work with her about, a classroom position if we need to for the 1 year.
Okay. So then we'll have additional recruiting and hiring that we'll need to do, correct?
For this year?
Yeah.
No, for this year, because we're looking at we will look at just 7.6 with we have 2 that we will be moving them from their current position into Empower. So we have our SciTech person at Richmond, as well as our Anderson,
Innovation
I'm not sure what we called her, but we would move those 2 into an Empower, and then it would be 5.6 additional. So they would be the 5 internal people. And then we have hired someone for art that can also pick up some of the Empower.
To Mrs. Fairgrieve's point, though, we would be then hiring replacements for the 5 people, the 5 internal people that move to Empower. Their classroom positions are going to be vacant. So we'll be hiring 5 people for those positions.
And those we have not started hiring for.
So
we have not posted those.
So our total then, using just round numbers, our total is 8, right? The 2 that you talked about that were coming from Richmond, and I think Anderson, plus the 5 internal, plus 1 outside, is 8.
That's a fair estimate.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as I don't know their background. So I'm curious, especially because they will be such an integral part of the transition plan, at least for the first trimester. Can you, speak to, what their experience or competencies are related to the core math and literacy components?
So each one of them are currently classroom teachers. So they have been, working in the core content for their entire career that they have been here. I think that Dr. Byrne could speak more to some of the characteristics they're coming with, because she was part of the interview teams, her and Mrs. Jensen. So you want more to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So with the Empower candidates that we are recommending for this role, they truly have the mindsets that we are looking for in this Empower role. So building student voice and choice. And like Ms. Geyer said, and having that experience within the classroom, they come with that unique skill set of knowing how to determine where all of our students are in relation to the standards and the learning progression, which is what we're really going to need to do as we transition back to school. And the Empower teachers are going to engage in a week-long remote professional learning in the month of June, which will have a combination of asynchronous and synchronous learning opportunities that are going to incorporate the learning from not only the Empower modules and building the competencies and the skill sets to effectively implement those modules, but how do you provide academic support to our students as well through things like diagnostic assessments, determining where students are at in relation to the standards, and how do you move them forward from where they are right now to help ensure that they are meeting the learning targets and proficiency at grade level standards.
Okay.
And I just want to say that there's actually a really good balance, because we also have some real strong technology background from the two that are in existing positions, so that as you're thinking about if we're in a remote learning experience to start the year, or even as we transition back into traditional instruction, we have a great mixture between the technology piece and the academic piece that they'll be able to work really well as a team.
I'd like to kind of jump in a little bit on the staffing. Just something kind of popped into my head regarding a couple things. First of all, will there be any training required this year for classroom teachers, for next year's classroom teachers for this? And if so, how are we going to attend to that?
So there will not be for the Empower and that work, because that will be just like we do art, music, and PE as a special, as well as the LRC. However, there will be work that going to the next agenda item with iReady, you'll hear some of the professional learning plan from Mr. Shazar regarding that.
Okay, I have a couple more questions regarding this item. As far as so we have 5 teachers who are currently in place, and I guess I didn't think to ask this the other day. When they go in, into the classroom, if we start in a non-traditional year, they're going to be in the classroom, and what will the replacements be doing? In other words, they're going to be the teacher at one point, and then what will the replacements be doing? And maybe I'm not posing that question very well.
Do you want to address that again, Dr. Byrne, or would you like me to?
I can. So with the recommended adjustment in the role of the Empower teachers, for the time that we're in remote learning, the Empower teachers are going to be supporting classroom teachers in doing things like teaching them how to use technology tools, setting up technology routines, incorporating some of that competency learning into classroom instruction. And their main responsibility will be supporting the teachers throughout that time.
So those 5 teachers will be brought on ahead of time in preparation. Okay, that was, I guess I wasn't asking it very well, but that's what I was asking is I wanted to make sure they were going to be there from the start.
Yeah.
Does anybody else, before I have 1 or 2 other items, does anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I had a few more.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Fairgrieve is still on.
That's okay. So as far as the teachers that are helping with this transition and moving to, do we have a nice cross section between the primary and the intermediate, or will they need additional support, you know, if they're moving from first grade to fifth grade, for example, or something like that?
We have a very nice combination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay.
One more, Mr. McNally. And I know Dr. Pearson, you and I talked about it, but I thought it might be good in this setting. Can someone speak to a little bit about how we're thinking about the transition for the middle school and the high school?
I'm looking at both Dr. Burns and Dr. Pearson stepping forward. I'm not sure which one's taking it. Who's going to start? Dr. Burns, you're going to start?
Hard to tell who's looking at you here.
Yeah, I can start. So in respect to the secondary levels, we have started meetings at the 8th to 9th grade level to really make sure that we have a really good handle on students who have not been engaged in remote learning throughout this period, and making sure that we put a plan in place to make sure that we're setting up all of our students up for success once we begin school again.
And I would just like to speak to the fact that we do have some structures and systems already in place at both the middle school and the high school level that allow us to provide interventions and study hall kinds of support for students that need additional help. iReady, which we're going to talk about in just a minute, goes all the way through the 8th grade. So we're going to have the diagnostic assessment tool as well as the personalized instructional program with the resources that students can work on individually to help also address some of those gaps in both classroom teachers and teachers that are providing additional support or intervention are able to use that resource. Of course, last Monday night, you approved the ALEC system for some of our math classes. So that's going to help our math teachers look at provide, or first of all, understanding with the diagnostic assessment where students are in their learning progression, but then also to be able to provide specific resources for students aligned to their needs. And then we're having some conversations across the district this summer as we think about what additional tools teachers may use to provide responsive teaching for students based on any gaps that are identified. You know, one of the things that we learned through this the last 2 months of the remote learning is that we need flexible resources that we can use in any kind of setting that could be used with classroom teachers and groups of students in the classroom, or if we're in a situation where we need to be able to provide that to students in an online setting or some kind of remote learning setting, we want to be able to do that as well. So we're working to try to identify where we have gaps in our curriculum resources and materials so that we can kind of improve and enhance our access to resources that do allow for personalization and individualization.
And Mr. McNally, you're still muted.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. McCabe, but I was just letting Mrs. McCabe know that she's up. I know Mrs. Weibel had another question, but Mrs. McCabe not had a chance to talk yet. So
most of my questions were answered. I was interested in what that the plan was also for the middle and high school. I just really think this is a very appropriate way for us to adjust what our kids are going to need. I am very appreciative to the association and to the teachers for going in an interim for a year, because I think this is going to really support our kids. After losing this amount of time face-to-face with teachers, I think having this extra support is going to be great for catching kids up and figuring out how to give them the kinds of things they need. So all my questions were answered. I wanted to be sure this is just a one-year plan, which would adjust if we go from remote to on-site, correct? Am I understanding that correctly? And I thank you all for making the adjustments and for hearing the concerns that board members had about money and how to continue to stay with our vision. So thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, and Ms. Weibel, did you have more?
Yes, I did. So I guess I hadn't asked all the questions before because I wasn't sure where we should slide them in, but we started talking financials and FTE. So I had a question for Dr. Pearson in regards to the timeline of us finding out if we're going to be going back in person in the fall or whether it's e-learning. So is it possible that we would be doing a hiring contingent upon that? It sounds like we're going to do a hiring regardless. I guess to be more financially conservative, I'd like to know, is there a possibility to do it with a contingency, knowing that depending on the duration of the e-learning? I don't know if that works in the hiring
So,
timeline.
One of the things that I think would be very difficult is for these 5 Empower positions of us hiring a classroom teacher in January, October, and then we lose out on this opportunity for these individuals with the LRC directors too, to really continue to give that extra support with the standards. So they will not only help teachers design instruction that can support students more at home, but then they'll also be supporting how we can use the diagnostic assessment if we go with iReady or whatever, and planning some individualized learning plans for students.
Okay, just being devil's advocate to be, fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayer.
But to that point, Mrs. Weibel, can I just say one thing? We are holding on the additional PE, art, and music positions until we know that we're going to return to in-person school. So
that was going to be the second part of my question.
Yeah. So as far as the Empower teachers are concerned, we really do believe that those staff members can help enhance learning for students, and no matter what the setting is, be it a remote setting or be it a partial day schedule or be it a full in-person school day for students. So that staff, because of their skill and credentials, really can enhance and support what's happening with it, no matter what the setting. So that's why we chose to kind of draw the line there and go ahead and move forward with that portion of the staff, knowing that when the art, music, and PE teachers, that when we know we're going to return to in-person learning, that's when we would hire those positions.
Okay, so in the timeline, thank you very much for that explanation. So if we find out about the timeline here, maybe June 1st, you would be able to move one way or the other on those other positions potentially.
Yeah. So what I anticipate is going to happen, and none of us have really known for sure as we've navigated this.
I know it's a lot of what ifs.
Crisis. But what they're hoping is that by June 1st, they would have the guidance document that would tell us about the parameters that we would need to meet to be able to reopen. And then we've been told that sometime around the 1st of July, they hope to be able to tell us whether or not we're going to be able to reopen, and what that timing may look like. Now, whether or not that will happen and within those two timelines or timeframes, that's to be determined, but those were kind of that's the initial plan. So as soon as we know that we're going to return to in-person school or have the potential to return to in-person school, we are going to want to move on hiring those staff members because we want them to be here and ready when students arrive.
I'm going to jump in on that point as well, just to say, I said this before, I always encourage that we hire teachers when teachers are being hired. You're going to have a very much reduced pool of qualified and quality staff if you're waiting until sometime after the school year's begun to hire teachers. So, and we don't appear as stable when we're doing that either. So I encourage us to as soon as possible work on those. But again, that's my view.
And so just to finish my thought, sorry. So
sorry.
in regards to the specials, we talked about potentially even offering more minutes to our current specials, that would even bring that into a potentially higher minute range. I don't know if that's something we would talk about later down the line, or.
Well, that's actually part of what we have put into the interim plan. They are going to take on some additional minutes in order to reduce some of the FTEs needed, recognizing that that's a great way to maximize our efficiency in the art, music, and PE.
Okay, great. So that was discussed. Okay,
So
awesome.
the description will change, but we know that this is going to be a temporary interim change.
Yeah, it just as a temporary interim change right now. Yes.
That's,
all right. Again, everyone pulling together to be a great member of the team. So again, thank you to the SCEA for their teamwork. Appreciate it very much.
So I had a couple questions that did not get answered yet, and I want to make sure before I ask mine. Does anybody else want to jump in here?
Mrs. Barker has her hand up.
Okay, I was just getting to that screen. Okay.
Something that I was thinking about is it sounds like we have kind of experts for literacy, with our LRC directors. And we have, your go-to, those that are moving into the empower positions, your go-tos for play and getting kids back into, working cooperatively together, and, some that were technology savvy. We didn't hear anything about math. So I'd like to understand, who would be the experts who are going to be supporting math instruction?
That would be our empower teachers while we're on the interim, along with our math specialists and the training that they'll receive on if we go with iReady. So they are classroom teachers right now that have been working with our Eureka and the standards for the last however many years they've been teaching here in the last 5. So they will take on that role, and we'll provide them with some additional professional learning this summer.
Okay.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I just have a couple really relatively minor questions, but as far as making sure that the parents, the public, the parents of the students who are going to be impacted by this, are we sending out this curriculum maybe via the principals or whatever, so that the parents will know precisely what's coming up for their kids?
So we have already created a website with all the modules on it, with the and it's parent friendly. It's for the parents, and as well as we have been looking at, the parent university of using that tool next year, as well as we really believe the best way will be for our students when they're in Empower to be sharing, and the teachers to be sharing the work that's happening. But the website's ready to go with this adjusted schedule for next year in the interim plan. We will have to make some adjustment on which modules are used. So as we continue, I know they've already started that work, but that is ready to go live whenever we're at the point to do so.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that perhaps principals could send that out to their contacts, just letting people, hey, look for this, it's coming up. So the parents know, and they're not all of a sudden asking, what is this new program? A lot of people don't know to look at the website until there's a change, and then they look at it, and of course, that's after the change has been made.
Absolutely.
So are we going to do anything as far as sessions for families to kind of get an idea, or at the schools, or anything like that? Or
well, I think it would be when we know that we're back in session and we're able to do that.
Of course.
We think the website is a great start, that we will do that, as well as, even with as soon as school year starts and we start doing some of these projects, to be able to send it out on our social media also to let people know.
All right. Okay. I think
Mr. McNally, you mind if I jump in one last time here?
Absolutely.
It's been a great discussion. I like hearing all the questions. One theme I have seen is I feel like we're making a lot of assumptions, what school might be like, what students might need. And we're sitting here deciding to spend well north of $1 million for assumptions that we don't know. So I hope before we move forward with any proposals that we can really think about making decisions with solid data, with what students actually do need, and not using assumptions that we might have.
Okay, and that being said, do we have kind of a breakdown of, I know some of this is, I always use the term marginal cost, that some of these are expenses that we're going to incur one way or the other. So do we kind of have a breakdown of what the actual costs are going to be?
I guess I'm not sure, costs of.
Well, Mr. Bryant was talking about, the expenditure, and I'm just wondering, I know that some of what we have in this kind of earmarked for this is not all money that would that some of it's money that would need to be spent were we going in a different direction in any event. So again, maybe I'm not clarifying, but
Well, we know with the longer elementary day, there are additional staffing costs, and the staffing costs, because when we have students at school longer, that does, take additional specials in order for the other piece of it, and make sure that our teachers have the time for the collaboration and the planning. So the additional personnel costs are for art, music, additional physical education, as well as the Empower Special. So it goes across all those pieces. So is that answering the question? And I understand, Mr. Bryant, what you're saying, that we're going on assumptions. And I think that's why the diagnostic assessment at the end of the school year is going to be very important for us to know, are kids coming back with losses and big gaps, or are they not? But I think that as we look at the additional art, music, PE, and Empower, it's really helping us make sure that we are engaging the whole child in education, of that, not just focusing on that core content, but allowing additional time for students to take what they're learning in that content and to be able to apply it in a different setting. So I think that's where we looked at the different specials that we're going for, that that is going to really engage the whole child in their academics.
Okay, does that answer your question, Mr. Bryant? Okay, I was trying to clarify his question, and I think I made it muddier. So,
Well, can I ask, are you asking, Mr. Bryant, that we do not vote on this until we have a plan? Because I think that's
what you asked. I was wondering if that answered his question. Is that what you asking me or not?
No, I'm asking Mr. Bryant. Sorry.
No, I think we can vote on this. I wanted to state my opinion, and I think it's not the way I think we should be spending this money at this time. I want to support the classes. I want to support the teachers and the collective bargaining agreement, which I think we can still do, but I don't think making decisions for an extended day is in the best interest of the taxpayers. And quite frankly, we don't know if it's in the best interest of the students. And that's my biggest concern, is we just don't know enough at this time. We don't know what the kids are going to need. So how can we decide to spend $1-2 million on something that we don't know is going to be good for students next year? So I am right. I'm ready to vote on it if we want, and I wanted to state where I stand.
Okay. Mr. Bryant, I want to know, I just want to understand, make sure I understand as I'm listening. Is it your preference not to withhold the extended day for next year? Is that what I was hearing, or did I get that messed up?
Yeah, I think we could absolutely withhold the extended day and still, follow everything in the collective bargaining agreement. I don't know if the extended day is going to be a benefit for students, because we don't know what next year is going to bring us. So why extend the school day when there's a possibility that the state can say that each student is only going to be required to work for 2 or 3 hours, and we're extending it by 40 minutes? We're spending $1.5 million to do that. Just it does not make sense to me.
All right, any other comments, thoughts on the matter?
I have one more question, Mr. McNally. You know, we've talked a fair amount about how this, you know, potentially is an interim step. And so I'd just like someone to walk through, how are we going to measure whether a trimester is enough time, and vice versa to that, how are we going to measure that we do need this transitional period to close any learning gaps that are out there? What are going to be the measures that a trimester was successful and we're where we need to be?
I think that's where we're looking at iReady as being that tool, because it does have the diagnostic and the benchmark assessments. So we'll be able to, in both reading and math, so literacy and math, as well as we currently have a writing assessment that we can use to really make sure that it is, and children are where they need to be, and who's not, and what kind of plan we have for those children. Otherwise, right now, currently, we're using performance series for that.
So as we get closer and we actually identify the plan that we're going to do, then will you come back to the board then to provide the results in terms of this is where we're at, and then this is our target achievement at the end of the trimester, or whatever? I'm more interested in what are the goals that we're going to set and we'll measure.
And I think after we get that first diagnostic assessment, it lets us know more of what is the growth that students should be making during this trimester. And we did, you know, and I know I'm talking about iReady that you haven't even voted on yet, but we already worked with a company that we can deliver the first diagnostic remotely if we need to, so that we can have information right as soon as we need to be able to see how we are, where kids are, how we can narrow the gap, whether we're remote or in-person learning. And then as we put additional supports in, how can we accelerate student learning?
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I think that kind of really was pretty much what my final question was that I had, was essentially, how are we going to assess? Really, mine's a bit more broad about how we're going to assess Empower overall, and kind of what our plan is. You know, once we've assessed it, what are we going to do with the data that we gather from an assessment?
Dr. Burns, you want to talk about that? Because it was in our last presentation about how we will do the assessment there.
Yeah, so as part of Empower, our assessment is really going to be grounded in the top 10 cross-sector employability skills. We have mapped out all 10 of those competencies as learning progressions. So we will know what to expect from every student at every grade level and within the specific modules as well. So teachers will be able to collect data on those competencies as well as the social emotional skills, and then be working closely with the classroom teachers to see how the work in Empower informs the report card competencies as well.
Okay. All right. I believe we've gone through and everybody's had an opportunity to weigh in. Does anybody want to follow up with anything? Okay. All right. So we are now, well, that item I am going to guess is going to go on to our action. And we are on item F, Curriculum Associates iReady Assessment.
And I'm going to invite Mrs. King and Mr. Shizar to share with you the synopsis. And I think we may have a short presentation for that, Mrs. King.
Yes, that's correct.
Yep. So I am going to now attempt to share my screen, and you guys are going to have to let me know if it's sharing correctly.
It looks like it.
All right, all I have to do now is make it into a presentation, which is being covered up. Okay, I can now successfully not see anybody else, but you guys can see the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, I'll take your lead. I'll follow you, Tina.
Okay, I'm Tina Cake, the teacher on special assignment for math and science curriculum. And tonight, Mr. Shazar and I will provide a brief overview of the iReady tool and how it meets some identified needs in the district. What is iReady? iReady is a comprehensive integrated learning system for math and reading in kindergarten to grades 8. iReady helps teachers use evidence of learning to respond to student needs, making differentiated instruction possible in every classroom. iReady includes assessment and instruction software, plus teacher supplemental resources. Extensive research shows significant achievement gains for students using iReady and meets the criteria for evidence-based as defined by the Every Student Succeeds Act. iReady has been vetted by the MTSS committee as a resource to support students in Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction. We have seen that iReady could be a tool for help us provide equity and access to students for both math and reading. The components of iReady include both digital resources and teacher-led instructional resources without technology. iReady has a computer adaptive assessment that can be administered 3 times per year, similar to performance series currently used in the district. The assessment is sensitive enough to measure skills and understanding across multiple grade levels for a student. One of the most difficult and important tasks we have right now is to identify what our students know and are able to do. iReady can help us pinpoint those skills. iReady also includes monthly growth monitoring that allows teachers and students to measure growth towards proficiency of grade level skills. After completing the diagnostic, students have access to a personalized pathway of digital online instruction. This competency-based program identifies a student's area of greatest need, allowing students to work below, at, or above grade level. iReady can help students fill learning gaps. Specifically, for math, iReady also has interactive learning games to improve math fluency. In addition to software, iReady includes supplemental resources for teacher-led explicit instruction. These resources can support individual, small group, and whole group instruction. The system also includes easy-to-use data reports that allows teachers to respond flexibly and maximize their instructional time. The data reports help teachers differentiate effectively. These are some of the currently identified needs in the district. We need an updated diagnostic assessment with tech-enhanced items similar to our state and national assessments. We need high-quality digital resources that are flexible for math and reading and available in one platform for the possibility of remote learning. We have a strategic commitment to provide students with innovative learning experiences. We need tools to increase student engagement. In iReady, instruction and assessment are linked. Students can see the connection between their daily work and assessment. Students get immediate feedback and lessons differentiated to meet their needs. We know from research when students know the learning target, set goals, and get feedback on their progress, they are more engaged and learn more. Currently, we do not have diagnostic assessments available in Spanish. iReady has Spanish resources. And finally, we need to make it easier for teachers to access data efficiently in the classroom to improve student learning. Okay, Mr. Shazar, it's all yours.
Thank you. I think I jumped the gun there a bit. Just to go over the budget aspects of this. So on the left-hand side, you see the expenditures for iReady, which is the diagnostic and all of the online and in-person tools that Mr. King just told you about. In the initial year, in the year 1, there is quite a bit of professional development provided. It's provided in three phases, and it's really geared to getting to the teachers and help understand how to use the data in the context of things that they're doing within our system, PLCs, with our MTSS process, with data meetings, conferencing with students, things that we're currently doing. How do those tools integrate well into those? On the right-hand side, the budget impact, there is, we had estimated the 2021 cost of tools if we implemented iReady that we would not be purchasing, that this would be able to cover, and that comes to $145,350. That net impact of the tool is a $30,000, just over $30,000 increase, and then the staff development on top of that. So the difference between what we would have been spending and then where we're going with iReady, the tools involved, and then what the staff development and how to embed that would be about $84,000. Just as a note, the district is set to receive a little over $500,000 in CARES Act money, which part of that is targeted for online tools and to help understand and bridge learning gaps, as well as facilitate remote learning as we continue with where we're at with the COVID and we transition back into the school year and however that looks. So there is new monies being put forward that could be used to help cover the cost of this. And I will unshare my screen.
Okay. All right, I'm waiting so I can see if I have.
Well, I'm attempting, but there it is. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. I just don't like the silence. All right, let me scroll along here and see who might be waving here. All right. I'm seeing no hands up right now. Oh, I see Miss Barker has her hand up, and Miss Fairgrieve next.
Okay, this is more of a comment. I'm actually very excited that this is going to replace Performance Series and then FastBridge. I think it offers quite a bit more in the diagnostic needs of our students and our teachers, and it really targets personalized practice and instruction. So I think it gives so much more than what we were getting before. So I'm very supportive.
I'm good, Mr. McNally.
You are muted, Mr. McNally.
Mrs. McCabe, any thoughts? That thing keeps muting on me. I swear I'm not doing that. Any thoughts, Mrs. McCabe?
I agree with Mrs. Barker. I'm excited and I'm I think that using this with students is going to also be a real benefit. The only question I have is ongoing professional learning when new teachers come in. Maybe you could just refresh what we do with new teachers and how they look at assessment and how do we make sure they know how to use it. Does their mentor teacher help? I'm sure the instructional support coach does, but is there we don't want them to lose the opportunity just because they're new.
And I can speak to that a little bit through their mentoring work and New Educator Academy, and then the ongoing ISC support / specialist support in the buildings. They continue to help with that. So they are definitely aware of all of the newness that happens with the teacher, and work to provide them with the professional learning in the chunks and when they can do it. So it's ongoing, and it really is truly embedded in the work that they do. But it begins with New Educator Academy.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it looks like the things I had jotted down, it does provide multiple data points in the form of monthly data. It's going to be replacing both Performance Series and FastBridge. We will not have those any longer. Is that correct?
Well, FastBridge is still in K1, and we're still using aspects of FastBridge with our tiered interventions. iReady is Yes, so there is some fast bridge still in. There's a lot of fast bridge that we don't need to do if we do iReady, but there is still elements of it within district.
Okay, and that's what I had thought we were going to continue. That's was going to be my next question. So if we were still using fast bridge at all. Now we are not going to be using performance series at all, though, if I understand that correctly. Am I right?
If this passes, then there would not be a need for performance series, correct? And we would not need to do not do that. This would take the place.
All right, and then as far as teacher training, this is going to involve training for teachers. Obviously, that's going to have to take place between now and the start of the school year. And are we all prepared for that? And teachers are ready to do that?
So I think that it'll look a little bit different. I think that we will really look at these groups of people first. So our ISCs, our LRCs, our student support interventionists that we have currently in the building, and doing some of those groups first so that they can start with that diagnostic right away. And then through our professional learning communities, as well as our staff meetings, to be able to offer additional. As Mr. Shazar has worked with the company, they will offer so much personalized for every building, and some of it will be online that they can do. And when we get back into the building, we'll also have some face-to-face.
Okay. All right. Is there any other discussion on that item? And I'm going to just flash through real quickly. I don't want to miss anyone. Okay.
I think Mrs. Weibel has her hand up.
Nope. How did I miss?
Thank you. So my question is, oops, sorry. Hit
There
the
you
wrong.
are. There was not you there. There was a snowman there in your place.
There's a snowman. Okay. So my question is, this is for K-8. Do we have an active plan for how we're going to initially assess our 9th through 12th graders in the fall as to where the learning gaps may be? I don't know who wants to speak to that.
So I talked a little bit about that, and I know Dr. Byrne can probably speak some more to the literacy curriculum, in particular the English language arts curriculum at the high school. You did just approve a tool last week that will really help with math. So it's going to help us do some assessment related to where students are for algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. Those students will have access to the ALEX tool, and that will help a little bit with that piece.
The ALEX tool, okay.
Yes. So for English language arts, one of the nice things is that those standards kind of cover grade bands, groups of grade levels. And so I know that the departments will be looking at specific gaps and looking at where those are addressed at each grade level to determine what needs to be adjusted in our core courses of English 9, 10, 11, and then 12 students, of course, get to choose some electives. Dr. Byrne, do you want to talk any more about kind of English
sure.
language
And
arts?
along with Dr. Pearson's point with the standards being grouped in grade level bands, so the great thing about the Common Core ELA standards is that there's 10 anchor standards that actually span kindergarten through 12th grade. So it's really easy to pinpoint where students should be on the progression of those standards.
Okay, great.
Kindergarten through 12th grade, and with them banding together at the 9th and 10th grade level, and then the 11th and 12th grade level, we do have Common Core curriculum maps so that teachers can be designing those assessments to help pinpoint where students are at in relation to those scaffolded standards.
Okay. What about coursework? And this might be course by course, but what about coursework that they were in one of and they need to take the second one? So I don't know, I can't think of an example, but like say you were in anatomy 1 for some reason in a second semester. I know you typically take them in the same year, but what if you didn't? Would that just be up to the individual teacher to assess and kind of get someone up to speed? It's going to be individual teachers and different kind of courses depending on what's going on, like in the science in particular, or it could be business or PLTW. I'm trying to think of what topics kind of go succession.
Yeah, so I can speak to the career and technical side, so business, project lead the way, and then Dr. Warren, if you want to add on to the other core
You
areas.
could just tell me like in general. I don't need to go through every line.
Yeah, so in general, what we do with the courses is we take the set of skills that students are expected to learn by the time they exit that course and need proficiency in to move on. So students who are in marketing and advertising 1, let's say, this year, and are set to take marketing and advertising 2 next year. The teachers will be working together to really determine what are those essential skills students should have, and then begin with some pre-assessments to really identify what skills those students are coming in with, and then be able to personalize their instruction from there to help ensure students maintain proficiency within that current class.
Okay, perfect. So unfortunately, it lands on the instructors again, back to our fabulous SCEA that's going to have to tailor everything to depending on kind of where our student level growth and learning has been.
Ms. Weibel, can I jump in really quickly?
Yeah.
Just to, all of our PLCs in 612 actually came together to identify those essential standards in this period of remote learning right now. So it wasn't up to the individual instructor. They did that as a collective group. They have that documented, so when students return in the fall, they can see what those essential standards were that were covered in the previous courses for 612.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, good. All right, thank you. I know high school is a much different animal than K-8 because it's so many more different horizontal markets, if you want to call it that, than just our four originals. So, all right, thank you very much.
There's a lot more vertical learning. You have to have a certain level.
Learning, not horizontal. Thank you.
Well, I wasn't trying to correct you. But I know there's a for example, to go from algebra 1 to algebra 2, quite simply, if you don't have the 4th quarter of algebra 1, that's got to be the 1st quarter of algebra 2, essentially.
Right.
And even with something like going matriculating from chemistry to physics, there are some basic competencies you're going to need for physics that you'll get from chemistry. So,
all right, thank you.
So I guess that looks like that is our final item. And our next L&T meeting will be June 15th. We are going to follow the policy committee meeting, which I believe is going to start. Is that going to start at 5 or 6? 5 or 5:30, I mean, because L&T will be scheduled to start at 6 o'clock on June 15th. So
that Mr. Bryan and I haven't figured out if we even need a meeting yet.
Okay.
Because if we're not in person, I'm not sure we bring the lawyer to talk about campaigning. So I think that'll be a TBD.
All right.
Mr. McNally, can we go back to the iReady consent or action?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, iReady. I think that probably ought to be put on action because it kind of dovetails with the other item. So I would assume for action.
Okay.
And I just want to double check those 2 items are actually going on the 26th. Is that right for your special meeting?
That was the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
So the plan was to put them on the 26th. We have to go into open session anyhow before we go into close. And now we're going to have elections. So we're going to be in open anyhow. So the plan was for us to take action on those on the 26th. Sorry to jump in, Mr. McNally.
No, that's what I essentially say. The same thing as my understanding was that it was the 26th, but
does anyone on the board have any issue with that? I just want to make sure that's okay. I'm seeing a lot of heads be saying it's fine. Okay. I think that just to remind everyone, the goal was because it's time sensitive in regards to Dr. Pearson and his team's planning. We need to move quicker than, not quicker, but we need to move on it versus wait for a regular meeting. And Mr. Moore is shaking his head as he is the one working on the hiring. So I just want to clarify as to why that would be going on to the special meeting. Thank you, Mr. McNally. I almost gave you a doctorate, Dr. McNally. Thank you.
Not there yet. All right. So we will, in any event, then be meeting on June 15th at 6 o'clock. And there may or may not be a policy meeting And prior to that, though, we will be meeting to discuss and vote on some of the items presented tonight. So, is there anything else? Okay, then it is 6:54, and I believe this meeting is adjourned.